Hey, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. My name is Salvador Briggman. My goal with this show, and also I guess with all of my activities when it comes to crowdfunding, is to number one, to educate you, to give you the tactics, the tools, the resources, the advice, the things you need to do in order to raise money successfully with a crowdfunding campaign. I can't say the number of people who have listened to this show, come back on to do interviews, had been successful. They applied some of the stuff they learned from this podcast. Other people who just send emails and say this one thing that they did listening to this episode really made the difference with their Kickstarter campaign or their equity crowdfunding campaign. There's so many nuggets of gold when it comes to the archives of this show. So there's a lot of good stuff out there with interviews that I've conducted with really successful entrepreneurs, also creative types, people who are doing something beyond just a physical product, maybe making a board game or doing something more artistic in nature. There's a lot of great success examples, I think, in the archives of this show. And the reason why I want to start this, not only to give you that tools and tactics, was inspiration. I very quickly realized in the beginning of my career that when other people, other entrepreneurs or other creative types, I don't really like that word entrepreneur, honestly. We'll just say people that are innovators. Whenever you see someone else doing well or seeing success, the general public usually kind of hates on them a little bit, right? They're like, that's so dumb, that's so stupid. This guy's raising money, what a bunch of fools. Whereas I always see that being a very pessimistic view versus the people who listen to this show, rather than actually seeing that as something bad, they see that as an opportunity. They look at more of an optimistic framework and wow, this guy can raise money, so can I, right? Or they want to learn what this individual did in order to stand head and shoulders above other people that are out there. So the other goal that I have with this show is to show you it's possible, man. It's totally possible for you to raise money when it comes to crowdfunding campaign. And I try to document that on this podcast, is other real people just like you who don't necessarily have the most resources being able to do six-figure campaigns, attract more than 1,000 backers. I really think that's very inspirational. And it's definitely something where you have to be receptive to seeing other people be successful and to not just view that as I want to cut them down, but really I aspire to that. And that's kind of what I try to do. But finally, the last thing, just for if you're new to the show, is to show what's happening behind the scenes. Because we do see a lot of the times those successes, and it's almost demotivating sometimes when we're I could never do that, or I could never be successful like that. So what I realized was the key ingredient that I try to have with all of my shows is an element of transparency and really what's happening behind the scenes. Because you could see someone who really looks nice, they're in a tuxedo and stuff like that, they're driving a nice car. You don't know what's happening behind the scenes of that story of that life. Or you see people on Instagram, you see them at their best, right? You don't know what's happening behind the scenes. Same thing with a Kickstarter campaign. You see someone who's raised a bunch of money, you don't necessarily know what's happening behind the scenes in order to make that happen, or what are the metrics or what are the levers they're pulling in order to get more and more backers. So today I brought on an expert in the industry when it comes to running and managing different Kickstarter campaigns. So there are a lot of different agencies in the industry. This is one of the agencies who has been working on a lot of different projects recently, and I think he's bringing a lot of good advice and tips when it comes to running a successful Kickstarter campaign. So this is Samit Patel. I'll include a link, make sure in the description so you can learn more about him. But Samit has really, I think, been doing a lot of good stuff when it comes to crowdfunding, and he's very candid as well. So that's what I really liked about him with this particular podcast episode. So we're going to get into that in today's episode. And also, finally, if you have not yet, go and check me out on YouTube under Salvador Briggman, my name. I also have a blog called crowdcrux.com. We have kickstarterforum.org, which is an online forum community. And finally, I have a newsletter called Crowdfunding Tips, weekly crowdfunding tips with Sal. So this is killer crowdfunding tips. You can go to crowdcrux.com/newsletter. You can join my weekly newsletter when it comes to crowdfunding. That's a really good place to get started. Without further ado, let's get into the brass tacks of today's podcast episode and learn from a Kickstarter expert who's launched many different campaigns over the years, how to actually have a successful project, how to get funded, how to get backers, and how to do it in record time. It's coming up right after this. This podcast episode is sponsored by The Gadget Flow. The Gadget Flow reaches over 28 million people, and they've been around since 2012. They are Indiegogo and Kickstarter experts. They featured over 5,000 crowdfunding campaigns, and if you have a technology or design campaign, it is a great platform to generate awareness and get backers. You can check them out at thegadgetflow.com/submit and list your project today. Hey guys, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Today I have Samit Patel, who runs a crowdfunding agency in the niche. He's had a lot of success with different campaigns. They kind of want to come on to share what I think a lot of projects are not doing nowadays and really what they should be aware of when they're launching a new campaign. So whether or not you're interested in an agency, I think this will be a helpful episode for you, as well as some tricks and tools that you can apply to your campaign. Samit, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, man. Great for being on this show. Follow your stuff. So yeah, great to be here.
To get started with, how did you get interested in crowdfunding?
It really came about as sort of an accident. In 2015, I was just coming off a back of another company I was running. I was running a really successful social media company that was sort of taking off at the time when people were interested in social media management. So we were offering a $99 service for doing social media management. Short story, I ended up getting pushed out of the company by my partner, and it was really it wasn't nice, especially as if you build something up and then you have that sort of horror story coming through. And I wasn't too savvy in legal things. He was much older than me. He had a lot more money than me, and he sort of put the squeeze on me. So that led to a lot of different things going on in my head. And I ended up just going, you know what, I need to get out of this. And I ended up looking at startups, and I was really interested in one startup, which was Blocks, which was like a modular smartwatch. It was all about putting a watch together like Lego. And that was really the first sort of campaign I worked on. It was very difficult to obviously get them to use me. They were like, you're too advanced, or you've been working for too long. And I was like, look, I'll work for free. Just put me on this project. I just want to work with startups. And that's really how I got started. So I helped create the campaign strategy for them. This was the era when growth hacking was a cool term to use. A lot of people will be saying growth hacking. So, and that's exactly what we did. We tested so many different avenues, and we were checking the ROI per different avenue. So we did techniques like doing articles and getting them ranked on Reddit, getting them ranked on Hacker News. We also did a lot of guerrilla marketing where we would hijack our competitors' YouTube channels and create fake conversations, and people would just be bigging up our brand. So a lot of these things, and that was really how I got started in crowdfunding. That project ended up raising 1.6 million.
What was the name of it?
Blocks.
Blocks.
Yeah, Blocks modular smartwatch. Yeah. At the end of the day, they've unfortunately not managed to deliver. I knew a lot of the guys. They also had a similar issue where one of the partners ended up just doing all sorts of craziness. And this is what happened. But it was a really good success story in terms of how much it raised. And it was like the top 3 funded of the actual whole space. But yeah, the ending of that story wasn't so great.
And this was when was this, when it launched, which year?
2015, yeah.
Okay. And so then since then, is that kind of where you got the bug and then started to manage other people's projects, or what was the transition there?
Yeah, so the transition was, again, I was never looking to set up my own business because I obviously just came out of a terrible experience of running a business. And I was just like, look, I'm just going to do this as almost a consultant working on projects. I did the first campaign, which did 1.6 million, but then people were like, oh, you've only done one campaign. And then also at the same time, they were actually looking to not keep me on because they were obviously focusing on manufacturing, which a lot of companies do. Once they raise some money, they're not thinking about marketing. They're looking at how to manufacture. So I ended up finding another company, which was in the same building. And this one was really good. It was Carve, which was a skiing wearable. Very, very niche product. I think skiing products before we did that only raised maximum about 20, 30,000. They never raised too much. And we ended up doing 300,000 for that campaign. And it was the highest funded, not only skiing product, but highest funded sports product, like for a long time. It was being all sorts of different wearables. And it was a really complex skiing product. It wasn't just like your ski poles or your skiing jackets. It was actually in-ear coaching. And that's literally the project that put me sort of on the map. Because people saw, okay, I did the 1.6 million, then I did the 300K, and the 300K was Like these guys were just engineers. They had nothing. They had no website. They had nothing. And I helped them build out from the very beginning. And then soon as that happened, I had about 10 to 15 projects hit me up. And I was like, okay, I could say no to all these guys, or I can work out a way to take them all on board, right?
What was the biggest difference between Blocks and Carve?
I think Blocks was around for years, so people had heard of it, but it never actually launched a physical product. So it had a small following, but it didn't have a major following. Like when I jumped onto that project, it had about 3,000 people, 200 people had paid a $50 deposit. We came in and took that mailing list to about 20 plus thousand people. I also did something which was really cool, which created an ambassador program. And this was actually the one thing that everyone just goes, this was like crazy, because we created almost our own private army. We had about 200 ambassadors who just loved the product, loved the concept. And anytime we did anything, they were like our army. So we'd go, okay, we've posted this on Reddit, upvote it all. And we'd have 200 people and we'd be trending on Reddit. We got asked to do AMAs and everything. Also, if there was any sort of people talking negative about the project, then again, this army would sort of get at them. And they help do a lot of fan events as well, which was really cool, which was really different as well. In their cities, they'll do a fan event for the launch. And also the other thing was we networked through them. So I created a questionnaire for them. I said, hey, thank you for being part of this ambassador program, but do you know any journalists? Do you know any PR? Do you know any podcasters? Do you know anyone that can help us amplify this message? And a lot of them came back and go, yeah, actually, we know this person. And we're like, okay, can you introduce us? So we didn't at that time have any PR agencies, and we ended up getting a whole bunch of PR just through these little small tricks that we did.
How did the $50 deposit work?
So we did a mail out initially to the 3,000 people. We said, hey, we're launching. Are you interested in becoming our super VIP? You'll be able to lock in the price of $300 for the product, and you'll also be the first to get some insider tips and tricks. So we had about 200 plus people put some money up for that. So that's how that worked. It was really a proof of concept, and just to understand, okay, and to take back to the investors that they had, look, actually, there is some traction here.
So they were basically, they're paying $50 to be able to get first access to the crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah. So this was before, when communities and things like that became like the norm. But this was like the very beginning. We sort of created like these VIP groups where only these sort of people, and they'd have to pay for access to it.
And then I guess it would be you'd hit launch and you let those people know like 15 minutes beforehand, okay, we're now live, go and grab the early birds. And then the other people would come in.
Yeah, so they just did a custom pledge. So they did where you enter any amount. So we just told them to pay a specific amount minus the deposit. So, and that's it.
Oh, okay. And then kind of like when you do the whole checkout survey process, then that would show up then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting. I think it's a really cool idea also to validate the idea. And also, those people are pretty invested, obviously, in the project's success. If you have 200 people that already are putting money down, right?
Yeah, so it was a really good proof of concept further. I think the technology was way beyond anything that anyone ever thought. And they also had a lot of bad luck. One of the major reasons why they weren't able to deliver was because Pebble went bust at that time, and they were using the same manufacturer. So they ended up getting a lot of leverage with the manufacturer because of Pebble. But because Pebble ended up going bust and ended up getting taken over, there's a lot of stock that was left unpaid for. And that's when the manufacturing company put the squeeze on Blocks and actually said, we're not going to produce it for you. So that led to a whole bunch of issues.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that can be really annoying. When it comes to this campaign also, so you mentioned them being like in existence for a while. How do you maintain interest and attention when a project's like there and people are like, okay, when is this thing finally going to launch? Because a lot of people that I talk with, they build up a list, say, for example, like 5 months before, and then it's so hard to maintain that interest and attention. How did you guys do it for Blocks?
Yeah, so for us, they had a small mailing list of about 3,000. So this was just people signing up, and this was before people were talking about drip campaigns and stuff. And that's actually what we did. We started creating drip campaigns to re-engage the people, telling them, hey, you've signed up. Sorry for the silence. We also did other cool stuff, which was get the CEO to have a one-to-one with the people on our mailing. So they would book in for about 15-minute to 30-minute conversations, just talking about the product. And that's it, really. And that's how we warmed up a lot of that 3,000 as well. And then we saw that working and we said, okay, you know what? Let's just do this full time. So we had a guy that was literally getting the mailing list and booking in like a literal call to go over and just talk about the product, which was another cool thing that we did
It
with
was a
that.
one-on-one call?
Yeah, one-on-one, one-on-one.
Man, that's intense. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. It was
Um,
really cool because it was literally having like our own focus groups, right? Like usually companies pay millions for stuff like that. And we literally had an army of these people. And every time we added more people, we just had all these suggestions coming in. We created a massive developer community as well on the back end of all these things. People are like, oh, we love the technology. We want to get involved and make something for this. So it had a lot of like that momentum.
Yeah. I mean, there's that saying, do things that don't scale, because I think a lot of people would shy away from doing a one-on-one call and spending, 30 minutes at a time talking to one person. But at the end of the day, that can really add up over time, right? And it really gives you tons of valuable information you can then put into the marketing. You can get a sense of people's pain points, all those types of things. So that's really interesting. Did you apply all these same techniques to Carve?
No, because Carve was wanted to do it in a much quicker way. The main thing we did with Carve was build up a mailing list. And then the other thing that we did was just focus on the video. So we did a video views campaign, and that video ended up just getting millions of hits for the campaign. And that's actually what drove a lot of the sales during the campaign as well.
Was
And
this on
then
Facebook or YouTube?
yeah, this was on Facebook. Yeah, this was initially when you could just go viral on Facebook, right? Before they stopped banning you. So what we did, we posted a video on Carve's Facebook page with a cool sort of clickbaity title and just focused on that video. And then we just added a big budget on that, and that video just started going viral. The biggest thing, the success of Carve, and me and the founders got into very heated debates. And that's the type of person I am, right? Like, obviously, I'm incentivized to get a good deal and work the best for the creators. And we got into a heated debate because they originally just wanted to target this product to coaches. And I was saying, wait a minute. So what this device does, it provides in-ear coaching using AI. And I was like, but what you're doing is exactly the same thing as the horse and carriage. And when they saw the car coming along, right, all the people that were riding horse and carriage were saying, oh, this is never going to work. So you can't just specifically aim something at coaches. And
I mean,
also
skiing coaches, right?
yeah, skiing coaches, because a lot of the mentality is like, actually, you can't use AI to do this. You're just replacing coaches, ski coaches, and things like that. And that's actually what happened. There was so many ski coaches that were just going crazy on the Facebook video and like, this is rubbish. You can't tell whether someone's bending too much on the left or right. And the founder and I would just go into a heated debate because we were like, no, you need to make this more consumer friendly. Like, this is something that potentially everyone can use. Like, yes, it's not going to be something that every skier is going to use. They're still going to need some ski coaching, but maybe after the fourth or fifth session, they can still use this. So what we did, we sort of said, okay, let's test this out, right? Let's open up the perks, let's arrange it, and you can have the coaching perks still there. And obviously, what happened was most of the consumer packages were the ones that sold the most. The coaches ones sold hardly anything, and everyone that bought the product. We were working on that e-commerce campaign, and Mark Zuckerberg ordered a unit, and we've had a lot of famous people order units, which is really crazy stuff. So yeah, it was a cool project. A lot of challenges with that, and
How, is there anything that you do in the pre-launch where if you have this heated debate, to me it just makes sense to follow the data, right? So did you do anything like having surveys and just asking these people which one are you more interested in? What are your pain points? Like those kinds of things?
Yeah, we sort of saw that data, right? We saw the people, we saw the animosity from the coaches. So we were able to see the feedback and things like that. It wasn't until later on where we sort of had the VIP Facebook groups, but during Carve, there wasn't something like that. we did get lots of feedback from people who were interested in the product. But obviously, like companies, they were being pushed by investors, right? So the investors were like, no, coaches is the right angle. And we're like, no, actually,
Oh, I see. Yeah.
isn't like this. It's consumer based. So you want to make sure you're trying to maximize that pie, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
skiing is a really small segment in Kickstarter. So you don't want to just go for coaches, which is an even smaller segment. You want to try and maximize that pie. So that's what the discussion was around. And it was
Did you
like, okay,
stay with reserving the product for like a certain amount in order to like qualify the leads and such?
we did testing and just working out with so we targeted ads to coaches and we targeted ads to consumers, and we were just seeing much better results with the consumer side of it. So that was a mini test that we did. We didn't get into so much detail as creating separate landing pages and separate communications, because they wanted to launch it quite quickly, and we had to do everything from scratch. So it was
I
very
mean, with
difficult.
the deposit, like someone pays $25 or something to be able to reserve a product.
We didn't do that with that one, no.
Oh, okay. Was there any reason?
I think it was just the speed of what we needed to do. And at that time, I felt like I didn't feel like, because it was a product that was building up and it didn't have anything to sort of get a deposit from. And also, they had the product concept, they had the idea, they had some sort of thing, but it wasn't the finalized idea. And they were very hesitant to take deposits as well, because they
I
were
see.
like,
Okay.
look, what like crowdfunding is makes us like not liable and things like this. So they have like obviously that investors and the conversations they have is they want to not have liability, but
Hmm.
they've managed to deliver all their products. They've got a huge community of happy people now. So it wasn't a case of not delivering. It was a case of just they didn't want to risk other people's money. That was
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
yeah, at that time, yeah.
So when it comes to this campaign, you mentioned one of the things that worked then was this idea of creating a viral video on Facebook. Does that not work now?
Yeah, because Facebook doesn't let you push as much, and I think the organic reach has just died down. But before, you could like if a video like it could keep going and you'd get like millions of views and lots of comments and your own boosted post. But we did that a couple of times, and we've just found that Facebook keeps blocking it or restricts it and just says you can't do ads no more to it once it gets to a certain point. We did that with another campaign, Octopus Watch, where we sort of did a video, started pumping some money into the video, and they just blocked it. So for us, it's a case of like we try and do the same strategy again for a product, but you probably know as well, marketing is constantly evolving, right? And Facebook one day wakes up and shuts things off or changes the rules of things. So we have to constantly keep changing things up as well.
If you're worried about the fulfillment and shipping part of your Kickstarter campaign when it comes to getting out all those perks and rewards to your backers, rest assured, I've put together a complete Kickstarter fulfillment and shipping checklist for you, and it's free. This is sponsored by the folks at Fulfillrite, and they thought that you should have this checklist as part of your arsenal going into a crowdfunding campaign. If you want to get instant access to this checklist and it's free, you can go to fulfillrite.com/checklist. Again, that is fulfillrite.com/checklist. Fulfillrite.com/checklist. Just go to that link and you can download it immediately. Is YouTube something that you guys experiment with?
Yeah, so YouTube is something that we've been doing since the beginning of this year. So we do a lot of in-stream ads. We're seeing good results from in-stream ads because you can get really granular into it. You can target specific channels and things like that. And you can get good results in building up leads. We've just more focused it on as a remarketing one, as well as building up awareness for a campaign. We've started testing it out for the lead side of things, but we haven't got it right down to a science where it's outperforming Facebook at the moment. So when a client comes to us, they give us X amount of budget, say 20,000. So for us, it's about getting the most efficient ad dollar for them. So we would run different campaigns. We'd obviously start off with Facebook, and then we'd use other channels like YouTube, Quora, Reddit. There's Traffic Junkie and various other click ads and solo ads and things like that that we can potentially do. But it all depends on what's the most efficient use of the client's money at that time.
So if someone comes to you and is like, okay, so I'm willing to invest money into my campaign, but spending $6,000 or $10,000 to build up a massive email list, like how do I know these people are going to convert into backers? What do you say to that?
So within the first month, we sort of have KPIs of what an ads and things like that should be hitting. We also do validation testing for those that really want further validity about the product, where we ask people for deposits. We've also seen, actually, we were, I think, one of the first ones, and obviously Launchboom do something similar as well, but we were doing it very early on. And sometimes you'd get maybe hundreds of people paying you a deposit, but when it comes down to converting at the crowdfunding level, they just don't convert and they disappear, and they never ask about that deposit, which was really strange. So since then, we haven't done it with any major campaigns. We just keep it to the clicks and emails, and we still see great results with that, really. But when we changed the ask to before we used to have in the funnel where they would pay a deposit and then we would push them to buy again. But it's almost an excitement thing, right? Like if you're building up the excitement and then you're asking them for a deposit, it's almost kills off the excitement. And other people in the marketing space, Russell Brunson and people like that, they also talk about this a lot. You want to push people with excitement, and that's why people buy a lot of the first time. If you're pushing them for a deposit, it almost kills off that excitement. So people that pay for the deposit are actually just excited in that moment. But afterwards, that excitement doesn't really follow through, which is, yeah, it's interesting.
If you build up a list of, let's just say, like 10,000 people, what percentage do you guys usually expect to convert into backers?
Depends on the projects. We've had lists that have converted at nearly 16+%. We had Oddball, which was a ball that you bounce around in it and it makes music. That they had a really strict budget. I think they only had like $10,000, and we were like, okay, cool. It's a cool project. Looks interesting. And that did really well in the end. And it got a massive conversion. It got a 16% conversion on the mailing list. I don't remember the details fully, but I do remember the conversion was really high. For higher costing products, the conversion is obviously a lot lower. Higher costing products, anything above 1,000, the conversions are usually around 3, 4, 5%. This is just the first email you send them. Obviously, on your second and third, and after resplitting various emails, you can bump that up. But on the first email, that's the typical conversion rate for an expensive product. For maybe a product around $49 to $69, you're probably looking at around the 12 to 15%. If you go above the 100 mark, then you're looking at around the 5 to 8% mark.
Okay, yeah, those are definitely pretty high. Also considering the open rates, right? I mean, most open rates are around 30% now. Particularly the larger the list you get, the more it goes down. So I would say, from Indiegogo, they cite usually around 1 to 5% about converting into backers. So it definitely really varies, but also how warmed up the people are, all those kinds of things. Do you usually build up like a list, like would you say like 2 months in advance, 1 month, 1 week beforehand? When do you build up a list?
We usually do 3 months. So the way it's split up, if someone says, okay, we want to do a build up campaign, the first month is really just testing, validating, getting the messaging and everything down to a T. If they give us 20,000, for example, then we would spend probably around 3,000 the first month just to test things out, validate it. Everything's done very transparently so they can see exactly where that money's going. We add them to the ad account. So there's no funny business that goes on. And we tell them the exact KPIs that we're aiming for. We're aiming for about 20 to 40 cents a click for the ads, around $1.50 to about $2 per lead. I think there's a big thing about leads. People say, hey, we're getting leads for about 50 cents. And if you're doing lead generation using Facebook, the conversion of that is atrocious. So there is a merit to the different quality of leads that you're collecting as well.
Yeah, definitely.
We've always found driving people direct to a website and then them converting is always much more higher converting. And also taking first name and email address. A lot of people just push email address. If you take that first name, you can do a lot more smarter stuff. You can have subject lines like, hey, Mark, and someone's definitely
Hey,
going to,
Marco.
yeah,
Yeah.
hey, Marco, open this. And then it's like, they're definitely opening that. But yeah, it's about getting the right quality of leads. A lot of people out there, they're just doing lead generation and it converts terrible. Like we used to do that and we just stopped it because we were like, the conversion is just pathetic because people, for some reason, they have their Facebook emails and some of them don't even check that. So
Yeah, definitely. So when it comes to doing a project, I want to ask you about a few alternative marketing techniques. What are your thoughts on Facebook Messenger bots?
it was something that we were using before all the new restrictions came into place. We use it to warm up campaigns, but we've sort of stayed away from it. But to be honest, it's just another channel for you to keep in contact with the people, right? So the funnel we used to have was website to thank you page to VIP group, no, to messenger and then VIP group. But now we've just sort of got rid of that messenger and put it straight to the VIP group. The reason for that is because we're pushing out a much more personalized brand, which we've seen works really well in engagement and converting people. It's a thing like if you're creating a trainer and you're going up against Nike, you spend billions on their marketing, how can you stand out? Maybe if you put your face to it, hey, I'm Sal, this is my amazing trainer. It's waterproof, it's used on all terrain, blah, blah, blah. You're much more likely to sell it and people are much more likely to buy it from you. So this is something that we've been using for the last 2 years in campaigns and we've seen it works really, really good in converting people over.
Second question, what are your thoughts on text message marketing?
We've not done it at the moment. It is something that is on our radar because as Facebook integrates more and more stuff, you can now get people's WhatsApps and things, but I still think it's very intrusive way of marketing. Yeah, I haven't really pushed it at the moment.
What are your thoughts on some of the other agencies in this industry? So like Launchboom, Funda Today, those types of companies.
Yeah, I think anyone on the Kickstarter recommended list, I have no complaints about, man. They're all doing a good job in their all small way. I think 2015, when I first entered, everyone was a lot of cloak and dagger. They're all the Wizard of Oz hiding behind the big curtains. And everyone had some sort of secret that no one used to know. And I think you did a good job in sort of pulling that curtain back. And that was the same thing I was trying to do as well, trying to make a lot more information open, let a lot of people that don't have the money to learn the secrets. I've got a Facebook group, I've got a book. All these things are really, you don't make much money from a book. It's just really free content that you're chucking out there. It's the same with the Facebook group, pumping out free content. And there's a whole bunch of content just to help people. But it's really about pulling back the curtain because we understand, not everyone's going to be able to use us as a marketing agency. Not everyone has $20,000 to spend, or their goal isn't to raise over 100,000. If that goal is just to raise 5,000 or 10,000, or then you don't necessarily need an agency. I think the key thing to a lot of maybe your listeners looking at agencies and consultants and freelancers is to work out the potential return on it, right? And also, if a deal looks too good to be true, then in most cases it is, right? Like if someone's just telling you, pay me a fixed and I'm going to invest all the ad bucks and everything into it, then to me, it sounds like a deal that seems really strange, especially if there's no transparency in what's going on. And also, I think some of the agencies, it's a numbers game for them. Like for us, we work with about 7 projects every quarter and that's it. We're very focused on working and delivering because I do a lot of public speaking. So my thing is to work with 7 and then I've got my enterprise gigs and things like that. So it's about focusing and making sure which one has a challenge, which one's really unique in the space, which one's going to be here for the next couple of years. And that's how we pick our projects. But other companies, it's like, okay, let's getting 100 and maybe out of this we'll get lucky with 3. That's how it typically works.
When it comes to figuring out the ROI, what does that look like for your agency?
In most cases, the companies that we work with on average generate over 100,000. So they're getting at least a 5x just based on the ad spend that they're putting through.
Okay, so you should basically, I guess, set aside if you want to do a 100K campaign, 20% of that should be the ad budget.
Yeah. Typically, it should be the ad budget. Everything depends on the ROI, right? Of what a potential product's going to get. No matter what agency you have, no one's going to be able to get you a crazy amount of, like, they're not going to be able to get you 100x ROI, right? It's really, you might get 100x for a small split minute, but afterwards it will go back down. But yeah, typically about at least a 5x ROI is what we tell clients to expect. I think a lot of people also don't realize the follow-on benefits. If your campaign does 100K, you're getting a lot more in retail distribution deals. You're getting a lot more through e-commerce sales. Every client that we speak to, they say, hey, we've had a massive increase in sales once we just send out a simple email and we haven't spent any more money on ads. So it's things like that as well.
When it comes to doing the ads throughout the campaign, one of the common questions I get is, hey, Sal, like I was doing the pre-launch thing. It was working pretty well. I was getting emails, all this kind of stuff. But then once we went live, it was like the ads just stopped working. What do you say to that kind of a question?
I think there's a lot of challenges with KS and Kickstarter and its tracking. And I'm launching a new book all about this in the next couple of weeks about Facebook ads and Kickstarter. And this addresses a lot of the problems. But I think a lot of people aren't looking at the actual numbers. There's something called assisted conversions, right? So someone clicks on your ad, maybe doesn't end up converting and comes for another channel, which is maybe direct, or they see an ad and they type in into Google, and this doesn't count as a sale, right? So a lot of the times you've also got to be looking at what you're planning to do. So some people, they'll start running money onto ads and they'll go, okay, I've spent $300 and I've got one sale or I've got 3 sales, so I'm breaking even, but I'm not making any profit. But they don't understand that actually you are making profit, but you're just not counting the conversions properly, or you're not looking at assisted conversions. Also, if you think about why most campaigns get a huge spike in the last 3-4 days, it's because of this remarketing that people do. Crowdfunding is very much impulsive purchase buying, right? And someone that sees an ad first time is maybe not going to buy it. But if you start doing remarketing towards the end, that's where your ROI is actually quite high. So on our actual ads, we're probably breaking even or making a bit more than over what they're spending. But on the remarketing ads, that's where we're actually achieving like 8x or 10x ROI. Just telling people, hey, you forgot this in your basket, or hey, we've only got 48 hours left, or hey, we've only got 24 hours left. And that was definitely the case for a lot of the campaigns. Mojipick, this was the exact same thing. Mojipick was a emoji device. The tracking was much more simple because obviously it was on Indiegogo. So you have the Facebook tracking, but even then, Indiegogo doesn't track all the actual clicks properly. So on Facebook, you'll have some sales, but there's also a lot of sales that go direct. So you're not getting your money's worth. That's why a lot of companies, when they come to us and go, hey, can you just work with commission and you do X, Y, and Z? And we're like, yeah, we'd love to, but it's like we're driving a lot more sales than you're potentially going to be seeing. And also for us, that's not the main breadwinner for us.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to this, also another question I get is there are lots of services out there where you can basically download what is the promise, which is a list of backers, right? So even just going, let's just say, for example, going on Fiverr and you have someone offering, hey, you can download a list of all these backers with names and emails, and then you can do a Facebook ad to those people. What are your thoughts on those kinds of services?
Yeah, we've tested a lot of them and a lot of them are junk. Yeah, majority of the audiences are junk, really. It's really difficult to test them out. The only way you can test them out is the pre-beginning and run ads to them and then see whether it generates you a lead and then maybe push them into a different mailing audience so you can test them out yourself. But there is a lot of fake data out there, man. Like before, when there used to be a time where Facebook would enable you to check over the data, right? And then you can see whether the data was actually the right data and you can correlate the data over. But then obviously when the Facebook scandals happened, they sort of shut off the data sharing. And now you can't verify whether the data is accurate or not because you could upload it and then it'll tell you where most of that audience looks like. And if it's the product, like if it's a kayaking product, and then you look at audience insights and you look at that audience, it would have shown you that it was kayaking related. And then you're like, okay, this data is cool. But sometimes we bought data. This was early in the days, right? Like when there's a lot of people saying, okay, we've got this X, Y, and Z data, and we would test it out and we'd put it in, and it'd have no, like, if you look into audience insights using this audience that we uploaded, it would have no correlation. There'd be no like Kickstarter in audience insights or Indiegogo or anything related to that audience. So we knew it was just junk audience. But now you can't do that. So a lot of people are getting away with selling fake data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. Are there any other tools that you recommend people check out that are looking to do a crowdfunding campaign?
The number one thing I'd say now is do a personal type of marketing campaign. Put your face out there, get a video, create a selfie video. These things are working really well in terms of engagement, and it's really the new step in marketing. I would say it's something that will help you set your brand apart from everything else, and is a whole different way to engage people. The medium now is literally videos. You probably see this a lot. Everyone that's a marketing guru out there is using videos to promote themselves. And this is the same thing that people in the Kickstarter space can do. And you will probably see a lot more of that in the next year or two. So now is a great opportunity. If you've created a board game or you're launching anything, put your face on it and go, hey, I'm the creator. Like, this is what I've created. Push them into a VIP group, ask them questions. What do you think of my games? What do you think is going to make it better? And this will really help you do well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And also for the listeners, if you're interested in learning more about Samit, where can they go to find more information about you?
Yeah, so you can go to my own personal website, which is samitpatel.net. There's also a free webinar for anyone that wants to attend it, can check it out on the website. Also, the agency, www.jupio.com, which is the overall agency that helps everyone out.
How do you spell that?
Joopio.
Joopio.
Yeah. Also, sign up through my website. I've got the new Kickstarter Facebook book coming out. I've got one on Amazon on Facebook ads for Indiegogo. So these are some things that can help you out. Like, people that have been downloading the Indiegogo book have just said how simple it is at explaining Facebook ads. It goes through step by step from beginner all the way to advanced. So, it's really good stuff.
Very cool. And if you guys sign up for either on his site or the agency, I'm happy to give you guys a free 30-minute consultation and coaching call. So we can use that to either go through your project, your pre-launch, what you're planning to do when live. But it's a free 30-minute coaching call. So just tell whoever you're getting in contact with or submit about that, and we can get that squared away.
Yeah, nice.
Awesome, man.
I think for those of you listening, Sal's doing a great job in the space. We're working on a few projects together in the crowdfunding space as well. So I think it's a good tandem that sort of does well.
Awesome, man. Thank you for coming on and sharing all those great tips, and look forward to seeing your next launch.
Yeah, cheers, man. Speak soon, mate.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. My name is Salvador Briggman. Hope you enjoyed today's podcast episode. You got a lot of value out of it. As always, got a lot of great archives there to go through when it comes to these different episodes. My role here is just to kind of help you and to be a guide, and to also share with you some of the resources that I'm discovering, as I discover them. So I hope that you get a lot of value out of this show. But in addition, if you want to kind of go beyond, if you're a beginner and you just kind of want to go beyond what you're hearing on these episodes, or maybe what you've Googled online, right? And you really want to get into like an intensive, okay, how do you actually run one of these campaigns? Like, what do you got to do in order to be successful? I answered that question by writing the book, The Kickstarter Launch Formula. This is literally the launch formula in order to smash your goal with a Kickstarter campaign. And I put this also, and I did an audible reading for this. It's really high quality, very good production value. And I also kind of bring a lot of my enthusiasm. So if you like me, the way that I bring enthusiasm to my teaching and that kind of stuff, and that kind of rubs off and you get excited, inspired, you might also like my book, The Kickstarter Launch Formula. So if you're interested, go and check that out at crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter audio. That is crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter audio. That link will take you to the Audible version of the Kickstarter launch formula. And also, if you want to, you can get a free 30-day trial of Audible. And I believe you'll also get a free copy of the Kickstarter launch formula. That's a promotion I think that they're running right now. So you maybe take advantage of that. I don't know when that promo is going to end. And also, if you are kind of like, okay, I've learned a lot about crowdfunding. Now I want to take the next step. Like, I'm ready to do a one-on-one call with you, Sal. I'm ready to have you look over my launch plan. I'm ready for all of that kind of stuff. And I really want to figure out, like, who should I be using in the industry? What tools should I be using? What advice do you have for me? And also, maybe you could get involved in my project. If that's kind of how you're thinking, then you could also book a one-on-one coaching call with me. So to do that, you just got to go to crowdcrux.com/coaching. And it's crowdcrux.com/coaching. And also, when you go to that link, you can fill a little bit of information about your project. What's your ambitious goal? How much are you looking to raise? Tell me a little bit about your product, that kind of stuff. So that way we can use our time efficiently on this call. I can make sure you get tons of value out of it. So you can go to crowdcrux.com/coaching. Just go to that link, enter a little bit of information there for me, and we can book your one-on-one call ASAP. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Salvador. I hope you have a great week. I hope you enjoy the weekend as well and you spend some good time on your project. Thank you for listening. My name is Sal, and I will see you next time.